So who remembers this? This is the antique chest that I bought about 18 months ago, 2 years ago. Planned to do a project on it, a restoration project on it, but as usual, things kind of took over with the renovation. So I've now kind of made a bit of a go at clearing out the workshop. So my first project is going to be restoring this, so it can be put back into use as our toy box in the lounge. Basically, I need to do a full restoration on it. I'm going to take the lid off, take some of the metal work off it, and the base fell out of it when we lifted it because it's full of rot and woodworm, I think. So we're going to see if I can replace that. So let's make a start. So first thing I want to do is take the lid off. The hinge is kind of coming away here, and to do any sort of restoration I'm going to need that out of the way anyway. Obviously I want to reuse everything if possible. So there's some short dumpy screws in here. I'll get some bags in a minute and start keeping all this labelled up. I think what I'm going to do, rather than break the hinges, see if I can. So if I work on it this way, hopefully I'll take the pressure off the hinges. This one's pretty rusty. Somebody's had a go at this with a sander. You can see where all the swirl marks are. So we need to do some work to this, and we want it to be a bit lighter as well. So we're going to take it back to the original wood, but try and leave in some of these little dents and dinks to keep that character. So you can see I've already made a start sanding, just to get an idea for what the wood's like underneath. It's a lovely big wide pine board. No joins in it at all, that's one piece. So I really want to kind of make a feature of the wood, and this dark varnish that was on there, it was just somebody had already started sanding it as well, so there were marks on it and it won't really tie in with anything in the house. So we're going to strip it right back, and then I'm going to give it a good few coats of Osmo. As for the metal work, these metal brackets are in fairly good condition. I'm not sure if I'm going to paint them or not yet. I'm not going to take them off because I think these screws will probably snap. So I'm going to leave it in situ, and I'll take them up, and we'll work around those. And there were some brackets right down at the bottom here. They were just so rusted through, and they were really sharp, that I've taken those off. They weren't structural. I think they were just to protect the corners when this was being used in transit. So I've taken the lid off. But what's obviously missing is the base. All the bottom boards were rotted through, and they were just no good. They've got woodworm in them, and they were all gone soft. So I've knocked those out. I'm probably going to replace the bottom with a sheet of plywood rather than pine boards. It depends what I've got lying around. So after a good amount of sanding, I changed tactics slightly, and I used a paint stripper for the last few bits, especially getting into the detail areas. That worked fairly well. It's pretty messy, when you're scraping it off, but I did it in one go rather than doing two coats. So that took the majority off, and then I let it dry and carried on sanding. So I'm just taking off any of the kind of bits of dust or any final bits of hand sanding that I can do. I wasn't being too fussy because I wanted the rustic look, but I wanted to obviously make sure it was nice and clean, ready for the finish. Decided on Osmo as usual. These are old tins that we had, so I was kind of trying to use up what we already had on the shelf. And in the end, after doing a couple of little patches, this is what the clear Osmo comes out like. So I didn't use any stain of any colour. This is just the clear satin, and that kind of took it to a similar colour to how our floorboards are, which is quite a kind of natural dark pine colour. So I tend to do if I'm just doing clear, I do 2 coats of the satin, and then kind of leave a day between. And when that's finished, then I buff it out with some wax and some fine steel wool. So for me, the top of the chest is kind of the main part, so I spent most of my time during the finishing getting that as nice as I could, leaving some of the character in there, but just getting a nice smooth finish that would be durable and usable as a coffee table. I then cut some ply to size to refit into the base. And now obviously I should have used pine really and kept it traditional, but I had some plywood which was the correct thickness to fit the rebate. So I marked that up exactly where I wanted any fixings to go through to make sure that they go into the body of the chest, and then I could just give it a good glue up. I tacked it in with nails, some decent nails, so that they would do kind of the majority of the work, but I did end up putting a few screws in as well and just countersunk those. I also punched the nails down because the last thing I want is to drag this across a wooden floor or across some trim on the floor and snag something. So that was really important, just to make sure it was dead smooth on the bottom. The screws are more for if the chest is ever lifted up, the weight of the contents could effectively pull out the nails, whereas the screws were in there to hold that tight, and obviously the glue's doing most of the work. So the next problem was the hinges. Now, of course, the hinges, those old holes from the screws, had already come loose. So I decided to take the hinges off and then move them across just by maybe an inch or two and cut a new notch into the back pine at the back of the chest. So that meant I had fresh wood to go into, to drill into, and to put the fixings in. I think the only other option I could have done is to use some small dowels and fill the old holes, let them dry, and then kind of refixed into that. But again, because it's a really rustic piece, another notch in the back there where you can't see was no problem. So just chiseled that out, matching the depth and size of the existing one, and then moved the hinges across. So I took the chest back inside to fit the hinges. Eden gave me a hand with the screws. We were going with kind of 16mm, I think they were. So really short screws, but quite a thick, heavy gauge. So they were strong enough for the hinges, and we could just drop it into that notch and fit those nice and easily.
Good girl.
So this part was a little bit more tricky because we couldn't mark up with the lid open because it needed to be in its final position to get the holes. So what I did is took the measurements from the old hinge holes because it worked fine before. So I basically took a detailed reading from each measurement, transferred that across to where the new hinge would be, and then that way it would line up and just be how it was before. And then how I normally finish small joinery when I use the Osmo is just kind of go over and flatten it off with some steel wool and wax, and it's kind of just almost like a buffing compound. It just buffs it out, makes it a really nice luster, soft touch finish. I did end up painting the metal, all the hardware on there, and also gave those a wax, so the whole thing was nicely finished. So if you haven't checked out the video of the chest in use, you can click on the video to the right there at the end of the video, and you can click on the left hand video which will show you the chest when we first bought it. But it's a nice little project that you can do with very little tools or experience, and just smartened it up, made a nice little feature for the lounge. So thanks for watching. Remember, if you can, do it yourself, and we'll see you in the next video.